The showers in Echo Barracks at Fort Redstone always buzzed like they were one spark away from dying. The overhead fluorescence flickered between harsh white and sickly yellow, turning the tiled room into a stuttering strobe of shadows. Commander Amina Cole stood beneath the steaming stream, her dark skin shining beneath the erratic lights. She had already timed the flicker cycle. Every 52 seconds, the light above stall 4 sputtered, dimmed, then dragged itself back to life. Habits like that never left you, not after 2 decades in special operations. Details kept you alive. Fort Redstone sat in the barren outskirts of northern New Mexico, a joint force training site known for its sandstorms, silence, and secrets. And Amina Cole had arrived quietly that morning. Her orders marked Tactical Climate Assessment, Level Crimson Clearance. That was Pentagon speak for, "Something very wrong is happening here, and we need someone who sees what others don't." She showered late on purpose. 21:35 hours. Late enough for quiet, early enough to avoid the night maintenance crews. She preferred transitions in silence, preferred not to be greeted, questioned, or noticed. But tonight the base would notice her anyway. As the water rolled down her back, she traced the old scar along her shoulder. Kufra Province, 2019. The extraction mission no one admitted happened. The bullet that grazed her collarbone had been fired by someone who never made it into the final report. Another buried truth. She inhaled deeply. Then, the metal door creaked open. Amina's eyes snapped open. Her instincts shifted instantly, the way a seasoned operator's did when danger entered a room. Footsteps. 3 sets. Heavy. Deliberate. Boots. Not shower sandals. The echoes bounced off wet tile, growing closer. Before I tell you what happened next, subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. It helps more than you know. Amina didn't turn. She kept her breathing slow and steady. One pair of boots stopped at the entrance. Another by the lockers, right between her and her clothes. A third moved closer to the stalls, the shadow growing long against the wall. "Well now," a young voice drawled, too confident for someone so inexperienced. "Didn't think anyone used these showers this late." Another voice followed, older, gruffer, meaner. "Didn't know they were offering private shows tonight." The third one chuckled, a sound without humor. "Maybe she's lost." Amina reached out and turned off the water. The sudden silence hit the room like pressure before a storm. She stepped back, letting the last drops trail down her skin. Then she turned, slow and controlled, her expression unreadable. She looked at the first man, the youngest, Private Kent. Fresh haircut, boots shined like inspection day. A pretty boy who never learned consequences. The second, Corporal Mendez, bigger, with aggression sitting just under his skin. The kind who believed strength justified anything. The third, Lance Corporal Harlow, stood closest, a clear, self-appointed leader. His posture screamed entitlement. His smile was the kind predators practiced in mirrors. "Evening, Commander," Harlow said with false politeness. "Or should I say, unidentified personnel? You don't look like you belong here." She held his gaze evenly. "I said walk away." Harlow grinned. "I don't think so." Mendez cracked his knuckles. "Yeah, I think we should talk." Kent hesitated, shifting awkwardly. He wasn't as committed as the other two. Amina filed that detail away. Weakest link. Harlow pulled out his phone, raising it slowly, deliberately. The action told her everything. This wasn't impulsive. This was practiced, coordinated, repeated. Predators rarely started with the hardest target. They started with victims who felt unheard. But tonight, they had misread their target. The glow of the camera light hit the tile. Amina's voice cut the air like a blade. "Don't!" It was not a plea, not a warning. It was an order. Harlow tilted his head and stepped closer. "What are you gonna do?" "You're outnumbered," Amina exhaled once. Everything after that happened faster than their eyes could follow. Her left hand snapped forward, seizing Harlow's wrist. A twist, precise, merciless, forced his elbow to the edge of breaking. Her right knee rose sharply, slamming into his diaphragm with surgical accuracy. Harlow collapsed, gasping, phone clattering across the tile. Mendez lunged, swinging wild. She sidestepped, redirected his momentum, and drove him headfirst into the wall. The crack of impact echoed brutally. He slid to the floor, dazed, blood on his lip. Kent froze, hands shaking. Amina's voice stayed calm. "Move aside, Private." He did. Boots thundered outside, voices approaching fast. Security had finally arrived. But when those MPs burst through the door and realized who she truly was and what those three men had tried to do, Fort Redstone would never be the same again. Bootsteps pounded through the hallway, growing louder until the door to Echo Barracks burst open. Two MPs entered first, weapons holstered but hands ready. Behind them came Master Sergeant Roland Briggs, a broad-shouldered Marine with 25 years of service carved into the lines of his face. He froze at the scene. Harlow gasping on the floor, Mendez bleeding and half-conscious, Kent trembling near the lockers, and in the center, Commander Amina Cole, calm, composed, fully in control even while dripping water onto the tiles. Briggs's eyes widened, recognition slamming into place. Not of her face, few people had seen her in person, but of her posture. The stillness, the focus, the unmistakable aura of someone who'd survived things others didn't walk away from. "Commander," Briggs said, voice shifting instantly to respect. "Are you injured?" "No," she answered, her voice steady. But these three attempted to corner and record a superior officer in a state of undress. Kent winced, finally understanding the magnitude of what they'd done. Harlow and Mendez stayed silent, too stunned to process what had just happened. Briggs signaled one of the MPs. "Secure them, all three, phones, pockets, any personal devices." "Sir," Kent started. Briggs didn't look at him. "Save it, Private. You'll need whatever's left of your voice for the hearing." The MPs moved quickly. They cuffed Mendez and Harlow first, both too weak to resist. Kent didn't fight at all. Amina stepped back, giving them room. She retrieved her towel from the bench, then her uniform. Her movements were precise, disciplined. No wasted motion, no visible emotion. She dressed in silence. Briggs waited until she secured her last button before speaking again. "Commander Cole," he said carefully, "I was informed this morning that you'd arrived for a quiet evaluation. I was not told you'd be moving this fast." "I wasn't moving," she replied. "They were." Briggs exhaled, tension bleeding out of him. "We'll take it from here, but I'll need official identification for the report." Amina reached into her pocket and pulled out a slim black wallet. Briggs opened it, and his breath caught. His posture straightened instantly. "Ma'am, this clearance level," he swallowed. "I've only seen this once in my career." "Then you understand," she said, taking the ID back, "why this incident won't be buried." Briggs nodded, slowly, heavily. "No, ma'am, not on my watch." The MPs escorted the three men out. Harlow's eyes were filled with fury, Mendez's with confusion, Kent's with pure, soul-deep fear. The door closed behind them. Only Amina and Briggs remained. He rubbed his forehead. "This base, I knew we had problems, but I didn't think it was this bad." "It is," Amina said, "and this won't be the last time you see it." Briggs paused, studying her. "Commander, what exactly were you sent here to do?" Amina didn't answer immediately. She tied her hair back, tucking stray curls behind her ear. Then she finally faced him fully. "I'm here," she said, "to evaluate not just training protocols, but command culture." Briggs stiffened. "That goes beyond my authority." "It goes beyond mine, too," she replied softly. "But the Pentagon didn't send me because this is simple." A shadow crossed Briggs's face. "Ma'am, I've served under 4 commanders. I've seen morale fall, rise, break, rebuild, but this," he gestured around the room, "this feels different." "It is." Briggs lowered his voice. "There are rumors, Commander. Women requesting transfers. Complaints that vanish. A certain lieutenant colonel who discourages reports. I've read the numbers," she said. "Now I'm seeing the symptoms." Briggs hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Lieutenant Colonel Paxton Hale runs this base with an iron grip. If something is wrong here, I promise you, he knows." Amina absorbed that silently. Hale. The man she'd been told had a stellar leadership record. The man the Pentagon suspected had been quietly burying red flags for years. Briggs continued, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "Whatever you're planning next, Commander, be careful. This base is not what it looks like." Amina stepped past him, heading toward the hall. "I'm counting on that." As she exited the showers, young Marines in the hallway snapped to attention. Some out of respect, others out of shock. Word was already spreading. Amina Cole, The new arrival, the commander who had just taken down 3 Marines barehanded. Whispers echoed behind her as she walked, but she didn't turn. She moved with controlled purpose toward her temporary office, knowing her next steps would determine the fate of more than just 3 men. The real battle hadn't even started yet, because when Lieutenant Colonel Paxton Hale learned what happened in the showers, he wouldn't try to apologize. He would try to strike first. The sun had barely risen above the jagged desert ridges when Commander Amina Cole stepped into her temporary office at Fort Redstone. The room smelled faintly of dust and old paperwork, the kind of smell every base had no matter the state or climate. Her desk was clean, a single tablet blinking with pending files and a stack of folders neatly organized by the administrative officer who delivered them before dawn. But Amina wasn't reading them yet. She was watching the hallway camera feed on her monitor. 3 MPs escorted Private Kent, Corporal Mendez, and Lance Corporal Harlow toward the detention wing, each man cuffed and silent. Kent looked like he wanted to collapse. Harlow looked like a man plotting revenge. Mendez simply looked lost. Amina knew they wouldn't stay quiet for long, not with the base leadership involved. She turned off the feed. Today would not be about them. Today would be about the man who enabled them. A sharp knock sounded at her door. "Enter," she said. Master Sergeant Roland Briggs stepped inside carrying a metal evidence box and a thick folder. His usually rock-steady expression looked strained. "Ma'am," he said, setting the items on her desk, "you're going to want to see this." Amina opened the evidence box first. Inside lay Harlow's phone, a backup micro SD card, a second lock device they'd found in Mendez's locker, a small notebook filled with initials, dates, and cryptic marks. She held up the notebook. "What is this?" Briggs hesitated. "We think it's a record." "Of what?" "We don't know yet, but it might match some of the dates from transfer requests filed by female Marines." Amina flipped through the pages. Some entries were coded, others weren't. A few had stars next to them. One date had a red mark. And that one, she recognized. 2 months ago, she murmured. "The transfer of Corporal Elise Grant." Briggs nodded grimly. "She requested a move to Fort Sheridan, left suddenly, no explanation." Amina closed the notebook. Another buried case, another woman who'd escaped quietly because staying would have meant something worse. She set the notebook aside and opened the folder Briggs brought. Personnel files. Dozens of them. "Where did these come from?" she asked. "Last night, after your confrontation, I started pulling old reports. Stuff that never made it to the official chain." Briggs exhaled heavily. "Commander, it's deeper than we thought. Lieutenant Colonel Hale dismissed multiple complaints. Some weren't even logged." Amina felt the familiar cold calm settle over her, the kind she felt before breaching a compound in hostile territory. "Show me," she said. Briggs flipped to the first file. Corporal Trina Morales reported Hale for inappropriate comments and an attempted advance during a training briefing. Complaint dismissed. She was transferred within 2 weeks. Next file. Sergeant Dana McClure filed harassment report against Mendez last year. She was written up for attitude problems 2 months later and reassigned. Another. The pattern was unmistakable. Amina looked up at Briggs. "How long has Hale been burying these?" Briggs swallowed. "At least 3 years. "And how long have you known something wasn't right?" Briggs didn't answer immediately. He stared at the wall behind her, the guilt visible. "Too long, ma'am, longer than I should have." Amina didn't scold him. She simply nodded. "Then help me fix it." Before Briggs could reply, there was another knock. Sharp, clipped, impatient. Amina didn't say enter this time. Hale wouldn't wait for permission anyway. The door flew open. Lieutenant Colonel Paxton Hale stepped inside. Tall, immaculate uniform. Cold blue eyes that scanned the room like he owned every square inch of it. His jaw twitched as he looked from Amina to Briggs, then down to the files on the desk. "Commander Cole," he said, voice smooth but glacial. "We need to talk." Briggs straightened instinctively. Amina didn't move, didn't stand, didn't even blink. "Then talk," she said. Hale stepped closer, his boots clicking sharply against the floor. "I heard about the altercation in the showers." His tone made it clear he didn't believe her version for a second. "3 of my men claim you assaulted them." Briggs stiffened. Amina remained unreadable. Hale continued, "Given that your presence here was not announced and your assignment is frankly intrusive, I advise you tread carefully. Fort Redstone runs under my command, and I won't have outsiders disrupting the balance." Amina leaned back slowly in her chair. "Balance?" she said, voice calm and dangerous. "Is that what you call the system you've built here?" Hale's eyes narrowed. "You're out of line, Commander." "No," she replied. "I'm exactly where I need to be." For the first time, Hale's confident mask cracked, something flickering beneath the surface. Fear or anger? He turned abruptly toward Briggs. "Master Sergeant," he snapped. "You're relieved from assisting Commander Cole unless I approve it." Briggs looked at Amina. She gave him a single nod. "Understood, sir," Briggs said through clenched teeth. Hale turned back to Amina. "This is my base," he said softly. "My rules." Amina smiled, cold and slow. "Not anymore." Hale left with stiff strides, slamming the door behind him. Briggs let out a breath he'd been holding. "Ma'am, he's going to retaliate." "I know," Amina said. "And that's when he'll make his first real mistake." She picked up Mendez's notebook again, tapping the red-marked date. "And I'm going to be ready, because before the day was over, Amina would uncover a piece of evidence so damning. It wouldn't just expose Hale. It would expose the entire chain protecting him." The desert heat outside had already begun to rise, turning the air thick and shimmering. But inside Amina Cole's temporary office, the temperature dropped with every page she turned. The more she read, the clearer the pattern became. Not just misconduct, not just negligence, but a coordinated system of protection. Someone at Fort Redstone had built an invisible wall around abusers and a revolving door for their victims. And at the center of that system stood Lieutenant Colonel Paxton Hale. Amina closed the folder slowly. The next step wasn't about gathering more paper. It was about finding the person every corrupt leader underestimated, the one who tried to speak up and never stopped. She reached for her tablet and opened the base communication logs. One name appeared again and again. Flagged messages, incomplete reports, draft complaint forms, saved but never submitted. Staff Sergeant Liana Brooks, transferred abruptly 6 months ago. No explanation, no follow-up. Amina memorized the external address attached to Brooks's unsigned report submissions. "Briggs," Amina called, stepping outside her office. He appeared immediately, as if waiting for the signal. "Ma'am, I need an address off base. Confidential." Briggs hesitated only long enough to check the hallway. "Yes, ma'am." Minutes later, Amina was behind the wheel of a government SUV, driving down the long, sun-scorched road that cut through the desert. She didn't bring an escort. She didn't tell Hale. She didn't leave a trace on internal logs. If Brooks was who Amina suspected she was, then she was the key. 20 miles outside Fort Redstone, Amina pulled up to a small adobe-style house, its windows shielded with sun-faded curtains. A single car sat in the driveway, dusty, unmoved for days. Amina knocked twice. Nothing. She knocked again. The door cracked open an inch, revealing a cautious brown eye behind the chain lock. "Yes? Staff Sergeant Liana Brooks?" Amina asked gently. Silence. Then, "Who wants to know?" Amina held up her ID wallet, not flashing it aggressively, just allowing the name to speak for itself. Brooks's eye widened. The chain slid free. The door opened fully. Brooks was African-American, mid-30s, shoulders still straight with military posture despite the exhaustion in her face. "You're Commander Cole," she whispered. "The one who—" She gestured vaguely. "The whole base is talking." "I need to talk to you," Amina said. "Off the record, completely off the chain of command." Brooks swallowed hard. "You're gonna want to sit down, Commander." The living room was clean but sparse. No decorations, no personal touches. Amina recognized the signs instantly. A place lived in physically but not emotionally. A temporary refuge. A retreat after trauma. Brooks sat across from her, hands clasped tightly. "What happened to you at Fort Redstone?" Amina asked softly. Brooks's jaw clenched. "I filed a complaint," she said. "Against Mendez." Amina nodded once. She had suspected this. "He cornered me in the weapons vault during a night shift. Said if I didn't lighten up, I'd lose my next promotion." Amina's gaze stayed steady. "Did you report him?" "Of course I did. I followed protocol. Went to Lieutenant Colonel Hale. Brooks looked away. Hale laughed, she whispered. Said Mendez was rough around the edges but harmless. He told me to stop stirring up trouble if I wanted my career to continue. And then, Amina asked, he rewrote my performance evaluation, cut my chances for drill instructor school. Then, out of nowhere, I got a transfer order to this place. Brooks's voice cracked. I didn't ask for a transfer, Commander. I didn't want to leave. My whole life was the Corps. Amina let the silence stretch long enough for Brooks to breathe. There's more, isn't there? Amina asked gently. Brooks nodded, tears welling but refusing to fall. Mendez wasn't the only one. She stood shakily and moved to a small cabinet. From inside, she pulled out a USB drive in a clear evidence bag. I wasn't supposed to keep this, Brooks said. But I did, because someone had to. Amina took the bag carefully. What's on it? Brooks looked directly at her now. Exhaustion replaced by hard, righteous fury. Security footage, she said. From hallway C cameras Hale swore weren't working. Cameras he said were under maintenance. Cameras that show him escorting a junior Marine into his office at 2300 hours. Amina's pulse sharpened. And then? She asked. And then that Marine filed a complaint the next day, Brooks whispered. 2 days later, she withdrew it and requested an emergency transfer to Arizona. Amina closed her hand around the evidence bag. Hale hadn't just protected predators. He was one. Commander, Brooks said quietly, I didn't speak up because I didn't think anyone would believe me. Amina stood. I believe you. Brooks broke then, just for a moment, covering her face with trembling hands. Amina didn't touch her. Didn't need to. The truth in the room was heavy enough. Staff Sergeant, Amina said, pocketing the evidence. You just changed everything. As Amina walked back to her SUV, she knew what came next. She wasn't just building a case. She was preparing for war. And this time she had the ammunition she needed. Because the moment Lieutenant Colonel Hale realized what evidence Amina now possessed, he would stop hiding his corruption and start fighting back. The drive back to Fort Redstone felt different. The desert wind, once dry and indifferent, now carried weight, like the air before a sandstorm. Commander Amina Cole kept one hand on the wheel and the other on the evidence bag inside her jacket. The USB drive felt heavier than plastic should, heavier than truth should, because truth had consequences, and at Fort Redstone those consequences were about to ignite. As she approached the front gate, the military police waved her through without question, but their eyes followed her SUV with something she recognized instantly. Tension, confusion, fear of change. The story of what happened in the showers had spread faster than wildfire. That was good, but it also meant something else. Hale had heard. Inside her office, Master Sergeant Briggs was pacing like a caged bull. The moment she walked in, he snapped to attention. Ma'am, you need to see this. Amina set the evidence bag on the desk. I have something for you too. No, ma'am, you don't understand. Briggs handed her a printed memo, fresh from the base intranet. Effective immediately. Commander Amina Cole's investigative scope is to be reduced. All interviews must be approved by Lieutenant Colonel Hale. All disciplinary actions must go through Hale's chain of command. Failure to comply will be considered insubordination. Amina read the memo slowly. Then she folded it once and dropped it into the trash. Briggs stared. Ma'am, that directive came straight from Hale's office. So did a lot of bad decisions, Amina replied, unlocking the evidence bag. Briggs blinked at the USB drive. What's that? A staff sergeant who refused to let the truth die quietly, she said. Footage Hale claimed didn't exist. Briggs inhaled sharply. You've got proof? I've got more than proof, Amina said. I've got patterns, I've got victims, and now I have the one thing Hale can't bury. Visual evidence. Briggs closed the office door quietly, as if walls could betray them. Ma'am, if Hale realizes you have this, he will. Briggs looked pained. Then he's going to try something desperate. Amina nodded. He already has. She gestured toward her computer. Let's see what Hale didn't want anyone to see. She inserted the USB drive. A single file appeared. Cam HC04 timestamp redacted. Amina clicked. Static flickered. Then the footage sharpened. A hallway. Late at night. Empty. Then, Lieutenant Colonel Paxton Hale entered the frame, looking around to ensure he was alone. He wasn't. Not anymore. He motioned someone forward. A young Marine, barely 20, stepped into view, hesitant, nervous, hands clasped behind her back in an attempt to look composed. Hale placed a hand on her shoulder. Too long, too firm. Then he guided her into his office. The door closed, the footage ended. Amina and Briggs sat in silence. Briggs finally whispered, "That poor kid. She filed a complaint, didn't she?" "Yes," Amina said softly, then withdrew it 2 days later. Briggs's fists clenched. "Ma'am, what do we do now?" Amina turned off the monitor. "We take this to people Hale can't touch." She grabbed her secure phone. "I'm calling Admiral Kessler. The Pentagon will want this immediately." But before she could dial, the lights in her office flickered. Briggs stiffened. "That's not normal." Amina stood. "Backup generator?" she asked. "No, ma'am. That system hasn't failed once in 6 years." The lights flickered again, then went out. The office plunged into darkness. Briggs drew in a sharp breath. "Commander, the communication building just went offline." Amina turned toward the window. Outside, the base had shifted. Marines were gathering, not training, not marching, moving, watching, whispering. Something was happening. Something Hale had set in motion. A sudden knock, loud, forceful, shook her office door. Briggs reached for the handle. Amina stopped him with a hand to his arm. "No," she whispered. "Not yet." "Commander Cole," a voice shouted from outside. "By order of Lieutenant Colonel Hale, you are to surrender all investigative materials and accompany military police to the command wing for questioning." Briggs's face went pale. "Ma'am, he's trying to arrest you." Amina's eyes hardened. "He's trying to silence me." Bootsteps pounded the hallway. Multiple. Heavy. Armed. Briggs whispered, "We need a plan." Amina grabbed the evidence bag, the notebook, and her secure phone. "We don't run," she said. "We don't hide." She stepped toward the back exit of her office. "We expose him." Briggs nodded, adrenaline surging. "Where to, ma'am?" Amina opened the door a crack, scanning for threats. "To the one place Hale can't shut down," she said. "Where's that?" Briggs asked. Amina's jaw set. "The base communication tower. I'm sending this footage off-site." Boots thundered as MPs flooded the hallway. Amina slipped out the back with Briggs on her heels. Her voice low and steady. Time to fight back, because the moment Amina reached that tower, she'd discover Hale. Wasn't just trying to stop her. He had already prepared a trap waiting at the top. The night came early over Fort Redstone. Fast, unnaturally fast. As if the desert itself sensed what was about to unfold. Commander Amina Cole and Master Sergeant Roland Briggs slipped through the narrow back corridors behind the administration wing. The emergency lights glowed faint red, barely enough to see by. Power outages on a military base were rare. Coordinated outages, almost unheard of, which meant one thing. Hale was pulling strings no one else could see. Briggs whispered, "The tower's on the far north side. 8 minutes if we move fast." 5, Amina corrected. "We don't have 8. They moved quickly, staying close to the walls. From across the courtyard, Amina spotted squads of MPs sweeping the grounds with tactical flashlights, searching for someone, searching for her. Briggs cursed under his breath. He mobilized half the damn base. "No," Amina said, scanning the patterns of movement. "He mobilized the half that answered to him." That was worse. They crossed the courtyard, ducking behind a line of supply trucks as a patrol passed by. The moonlight glinted off rifles. One MP spoke into his radio. "Command wants visual confirmation. She's armed and obstructing base security." Amina's jaw tightened. They were painting her as the threat. Briggs leaned closer. "What's our move if they spot us?" "They won't," Amina whispered. "Hale's expecting me to need stealth. I'm going to give him speed." She broke from cover. Briggs barely managed to follow. They sprinted across the open lot toward the base communication tower. The tall steel structure rose like a skeletal giant against the night sky, red warning beacons blinking at its top. Amina scanned the perimeter. 2 guards, standard rotation, not Hale's loyalists. Good. She approached directly, the boldness alone making the guards freeze. "Halt!" one yelled, rifle half raised. Amina stepped forward, voice firm. "Commander Cole, clearance Delta Black. I need immediate secure access to the comm tower. The guards exchanged looks. They weren't dumb. They knew her name by now. They also knew Hale had issued orders. Conflicting ones. Ma'am, we've received instructions from Lieutenant Colonel Hale. Hale is under investigation for abuse of authority. Amina cut in sharply, presenting her identification. I have evidence that must be transmitted off base. If you delay me, you will be obstructing a federal inquiry. The guards hesitated. Briggs stepped up beside her. You two know this base better than anyone. Ask yourselves, who do you really trust right now? A long silence. Finally, the older guard nodded tightly. Ma'am, go. Amina didn't thank him. There wasn't time. She led Briggs toward the steel door at the base of the tower. He keyed in the access code. The lock clicked. They stepped inside the narrow, echoing chamber filled with equipment racks, humming generators, and the steep metal staircase spiraling upward. Briggs secured the door behind them. That'll slow them, he said. Not enough, Amina replied. Move. They climbed fast. Step after step, floor after floor. The sound of their boots echoed through the hollow structure. Halfway up, Briggs spoke through heavy breaths. Ma'am, what if Hale's already corrupted the transmission system? Then I send it through mine, Amina said, tapping the secure device clipped under her shirt. Encrypted, direct, untraceable. Hale can't intercept it. They reached the top landing, a small steel platform beneath the blinking beacon. Wind whipped around them, sharp and cold. Amina accessed the communications console, a reinforced panel built for emergency transmissions. Briggs, watch the stairs, she ordered. He positioned himself at the top, hand near his sidearm. Amina plugged in the USB drive. The console flickered to life. Transmit secure data? Yes. She pressed the button. The progress bar began to climb. 5%, 12%, 19%. Wind roared through the tower frame. Briggs stiffened. Ma'am, someone's coming up. Amina didn't turn. How many? Too many. The metal staircase groaned under rushing boots. The progress bar crawled upward. 27%, 32%. Briggs drew his weapon. Commander, we're outnumbered. Amina's voice stayed level. Hold them for as long as you can. Don't fire unless fired upon. Hale wants an excuse to paint us as hostile. He nodded, bracing himself. The metal door at the bottom level slammed open. Shouts echoed upward. Commander Cole, stand down immediately. Hale's orders. Back away from the tower controls. Briggs called down. This is illegal detainment. You're obstructing a federal investigation. No answer. Only boots. Only aggression. Only Hale's reach. The progress bar crawled forward. 41%, 49%. Then, Amina heard it. Another set of footsteps. Heavy. Measured, coldly calm. Not an MP, a man who believed he was in total control. Lieutenant Colonel Paxton Hale. His voice echoed upward, dripping arrogance. Commander Cole! Amina didn't answer. Turn off the transmission, Hale shouted, and I might consider a private negotiation. Briggs spat downward. You're done, Hale. Hale laughed. Oh, Master Sergeant, you don't know how far my influence goes. Amina ignored them. Her eyes stayed on the progress bar. 67%, 71%. Hale's voice sharpened. You send that footage out, and you'll never leave this base. Briggs's hand tightened on his weapon. Amina's lips pressed into a thin line. I was never here to leave, she murmured. Hale shouted up again, voice cracking. Cole! The progress bar ticked again. 82%, 89%, 93%. Bootsteps thundered closer. Briggs braced himself. Hale reached the final flight of stairs, rage etched across his face. Amina stared at the screen. 100% transmission sent. She exhaled once. Calm. Final. Briggs turned. Ma'am? Amina disconnected the drive. It's over. But she was wrong, because Hale stepped onto the platform. And he wasn't alone. Behind him stood 6 armed MPs, rifles raised, and Hale's voice was ice. No, Commander, it's not over, not even close, because Hale didn't come to arrest Amina. He came to eliminate every threat she represented. And at 200 feet above ground, with no backup coming, this confrontation would turn deadly. The steel platform shuddered as Lieutenant Colonel Paxton Hale stepped fully into view. Night wind whipping his uniform and throwing sparks of red light across his face from the tower beacon. 6 MPs fanned out behind him, rifles raised, breathing hard from the climb. At this height, 200 feet above the desert floor, there was nowhere to retreat, nowhere to maneuver. Amina Cole and Master Sergeant Briggs were pinned. Briggs positioned himself between Amina and the MPs, voice steady but eyes sharp. "Sir, you're violating federal protocol. Lower your weapons." Hale smiled, and the expression was colder than the steel beneath them. "Briggs, you're a good Marine. Loyal, solid. But loyalty without obedience?" He shook his head. "That makes you a liability." Amina stepped forward, not enough to provoke, but enough to pull Hale's attention toward her instead of Briggs. "You're cornered, Hale," she said. "The evidence is off this base. The Pentagon has it. There's no negotiation left." Hale's jaw tightened. "You're wrong, Commander. There's always a negotiation, especially when one side—" He gestured around them to the isolated tower, the darkened base below. "The loyal MPs. Holds all the leverage." The MPs shifted, fingers tightening around their rifles. All it would take was a twitch, one wrong breath. Amina kept her voice calm and surgical. "You pull those triggers and you won't just be facing a dishonorable discharge. You'll face life in federal prison. Not if there's no story left to tell," Hale said, stepping closer. "Not if this ends with a simple explanation. 2 rogue officers resisting arrest. A tragic struggle. An unfortunate fall from a tower." Briggs stiffened. "Sir, you can't be serious." Hale's eyes flashed. "I've never been more serious in my life." The wind howled. The beacon blinked. The platform groaned with tension. Amina calculated distances, angles, weapon positions. 6 rifles. 1 unstable commander. A narrow platform with a sheer drop. She could disarm 2, maybe 3, but Briggs wouldn't survive the volley. She lowered her hands slightly, not surrendering but shifting into negotiation posture. "Hale," she said evenly, "you're thinking like a man who still believes he has allies outside this base, but you don't. The moment that transmission went out, your world collapsed." He didn't blink. "You think Washington will believe a field agent over a decorated commanding officer with an impeccable record?" Amina stepped closer. "And a security video." Hale's smirk wavered. "And a list of buried complaints." The smirk faded completely. "And victims who are ready to testify." Now Hale's facade cracked, just enough to reveal the truth underneath. Fear. Real, primal fear. She moved half a step closer. "It's over, Paxton." A beat of silence. Then, Hale's expression snapped. "No!" His voice rose, tight, unhinged. "It's over when I say it's over." He shouted to the MPs, "Take them!" Rifles lifted. Briggs reached for his sidearm. Then everything exploded at once. A blinding flash of light erupted from the tower's base. A deafening boom rattled the steel frame. The entire structure rocked violently. Briggs grabbed the railing. Hale stumbled, slamming into one of the MPs. The platform tilted, metal screaming under the shock. Amina held her balance, voice cutting through the chaos. "That was the generator. Hale killed the main power. Now he's sabotaging the tower." Smoke drifted upward as alarms blared in the distance. The MPs panicked. "Sir, the tower's destabilizing. We need to evacuate." But Hale wasn't listening. His eyes were locked on Amina. Wild, desperate, murderous. "You're not leaving this tower alive." He lunged forward, drawing his sidearm. Briggs shouted, "Commander!" Amina pivoted as the pistol fired. The bullet tore past her shoulder into the steel railing. Briggs tackled one of the MPs, knocking his rifle aside. 2 others raised their weapons, but the tower lurched again, sending them stumbling. Amina moved fast. She grabbed the railing, swung around Hale's blind spot, and slammed her forearm into his wrist. The gun clattered toward the edge, teetered, fell off the tower entirely. Hale roared with rage and charged her, hands outstretched. Amina sidestepped. Hale stumbled forward, almost losing his footing on the slick steel. Below them, Marines were flooding the courtyard, alarms blaring, flashlights cutting through the darkness. The tower was seconds from a total evacuation order. Briggs held off the MPs, shouting, "Ma'am! This platform isn't going to hold!" Amina squared herself. "Hale!" she called. He turned sharply toward her. "This ends now." His face twisted. "Yes!" he spat, charging her again. "It does!" Amina stepped forward, planting her foot, twisting her hips, and used Hale's own momentum against him. She trapped his arm, pivoted, and threw him into the railing with brutal precision. The metal buckled. Hale's eyes went wide. He clung to the warped steel, legs dangling. Over the 200-foot drop. "Commander!" Briggs yelled. Amina grabbed Hale's wrist, holding him suspended between life and death. For 1 second, everything froze. Wind, alarms, shouts, all drowned beneath the weight of what came next. Hale stared at her, breath shaking. You're not letting me fall." Amina met his eyes. "No," she said quietly. "I'm letting the law take you." She tightened her grip, but suddenly, a crack split through the platform beneath them, a deep, tearing sound. The metal was giving way. Amina's boots slid. Hale's grip faltered. Briggs screamed, "Commander, move!" But it was too late. The steel beneath them collapsed, and both Hale and Amina dropped. Because the fall didn't kill them. What waited at the bottom of the tower then would be far worse. The sun rose over Fort Redstone like it was trying to wash the base clean. Every building, every gravel path, every barracks door seemed sharper, clearer, as if the desert itself understood that something fundamental had shifted. Commander Amina Cole walked across the parade ground with the steady gait of someone who'd survived the storm and was now preparing to rebuild after it. 3 days earlier, she'd left this same ground under a cloud of forced departure orders. Now she returned with authority no one could challenge. Director of the newly formed Military Climate and Conduct Review Task Force, a unit built not for show, not for politics, but for cleaning out every dark corner the old guard had allowed to fester. Colonel Javier Ruiz, now the acting base commander, met her outside the administrative building. He looked both relieved and uneasy, as if trying to measure the weight of the chain she carried back with her. Director Cole," he said, straightening his posture. "The transition team has prepared your office, and the base knows you're coming." Amina nodded. She expected nothing less. "What's the temperature?" she asked. Ruiz blew out a slow breath. "Mixed. Some Marines are scared, some are furious. A good number are hopeful." He glanced toward a row of young recruits marching in formation. "They're saying this base might finally become what it should have been all along." Amina let that sit for a moment. Words were easy. Change was not. Still, hope was a start. Inside the building that had once belonged to the very man who buried complaints and protected predators, the atmosphere was different. Quiet, alert, watching. The staff didn't know how to act around her yet, and that was fine. Respect earned under pressure lasted longer than the kind demanded by rank. A small group waited in the conference room. Sergeant Lila Torres, Corporal Nia Barlow, Specialist Janie Connors, and 4 other women who had stood before a Senate committee and told the truth the system had tried to suffocate. Each now wore the newly stitched insignia of the review team, Amina's very first recruits. "Attention!" Torres called when Amina walked in. "At ease," Amina replied, motioning them into their seats. She remained standing. Leadership didn't always need height. Sometimes it needed presence. "These last weeks have exposed something we all knew but were forced to pretend didn't exist," she began. "A culture that let men like Mendez, Kent, and Harlow thrive. A chain of command that buried the pleas of women who deserved better. A system built to protect reputation over reality." Every woman in the room nodded, some subtly, some with fire behind their eyes. "But now," Amina continued, "we get to rebuild the system from the inside. And that means we do things differently." She walked to the board and wrote 3 words. Accountability, transparency, protection. These aren't slogans, they're marching orders. Every complaint is documented. Every retaliation attempt gets reported directly to my office. Every training unit gets evaluated by surprise audits. No more quiet transfers, no more closed-door deals, no more silence. A low ripple of emotion passed around the room. Relief, vengeance, determination. Maybe all 3. Corporal Barlow raised her hand. "Ma'am, the women coming forward, we've got more every day. 18 new cases this week alone." Amina nodded. "And there'll be more. That's what happens when people stop being afraid." Torres glanced at the stack of files. "It won't be easy." Amina gave a small, razor-edged smile. "Nothing worth protecting ever is." After the briefing, Amina walked the base alone. She passed Marines who stiffened when they saw her and others who nodded with quiet respect. She passed training fields where new recruits pushed through their drills with raw determination. She passed the barracks where she'd fought 3 men who thought a lone black woman in a shower was the perfect target. Now the base felt different, not fixed, but shifting. Change wasn't loud. Change was persistence. She stopped at the entrance of Echo Barracks, the place where the entire operation first erupted. Torres caught up to her. "Director?" Amina looked at the building for a long moment. "This is where they learned the wrong people were finally done being quiet," she said. "This is where the culture started to break. Do you think it'll last?" Torres asked softly. Amina turned to her. Strong, steady, resolved. "It'll last," she said, "because we're going to make it last." She finally walked away from the showers, stepping into a future she'd never asked for but was more than ready to own. And just like that, the real mission began. Before you go, subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments what time it is where you're watching from. It helps more than you know.